Good evening. Good evening. I am your host, Dr. Reggie Ratliff. Welcome to Let's Talk Maywood on Diversity Today Media. I'm happy to always see that introduction because it's always about Maywood. It's all Maywood all the time. As somebody who's from the Village of Eternal Light, I'm honored to co-host this beautiful, extraordinary, very professional podcast. And joining me is my co-host, my co-laborer in the vineyard, and expert investment analyst, advisor, extraordinary, Terrence Hollingsworth. Terry, are you there?
What's up? How's
What up,
everybody
man?
doing tonight?
All right, we're chilling, man. Maywood chilling. I don't know if the United States is chilling, bro. I think the nation is pretty hot. I think they're pretty hot. So,
I
what's
think
going
it's
on?
interesting all the things that I've been hearing and just people reactions, prior to the election and then, afterwards. And so, on one hand, they say the system doesn't work, and on the other hand, we're saying it's working perfectly fine.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack, but before we get into the conversation, Terry, I just wanted to let the audience know who do tune in, either during or after this podcast, that our guest, Evan Acevedo, who was the founder of Panderia, Puebla, he could not join us this evening, though he was originally scheduled. So he sends his apologies to the audience, but he's going to come back in due time. So we do wish him well during this time. So just wanted to put that out there. But getting back to, the topic, man, of the day and of the week, what's your thoughts about the results of the election process overall? We talk about the Senate that's going to the Republicans, the House that's still up in the air. Of course, the executive office with Donald Trump winning. I mean, he won pretty handily. So what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, let's just be honest with you. The system is designed in a way that is built on people showing up to vote. And when people show up to vote, at the end of the day, somebody showed up to vote. People, they picked the president,
Right.
and it would not have mattered if it was Trump or Kamala.
Mm-hmm.
Um, somebody wasn't going to be happy, right?
Right. Right.
And so that's the truth. But the key for us is to stay focused, right?
Indeed. Indeed.
Because I've seen people talk about, oh man, we're about to go 50 years backwards. We're about to do this,
Yeah.
and some of those things are true. But I personally think more than anything else, the thing that we have to worry about is not who's the president, but
Mm-hmm.
what the effects of AI will be on our economy, on us personally, and things like this. And so when you look at the stock market has, made an all-time high today,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The Federal Reserve cut interest rates by a quarter
Yeah.
percent, right?
Yep. Yep.
There's all these other things that's going on that has a big significant effect on us,
Mm-hmm.
and we're stuck on whether Donald Trump is a racist and he got elected or not, right? So let me ask you a question. You
Mm-hmm.
were the What are your thoughts about the stock market and the investment world and things like that?
Well, I think it's a reaction to Trump winning. Bottom line, he caters to the wealthy. That's his audience, and the numbers show that. The data show that. With the corporate tax raise, tax for the wealthy, and things like that. The other things, amongst others, on the agenda, they reacted. In my opinion, I mean, there are other factors, as you know, because you're the expert. But just from an economic standpoint, since the economy is what make the stock market, I think they simply reacted. They wanted Trump to win because they saw the benefit, and they don't want the social, the social, services aspect. coincidentally, the economy was a number one choice. It wasn't the LGBTQ community. It wasn't pro-choice, whether you're pro-choice or for abortion or
Mm-hmm.
abortion. It wasn't about Trump being, a felon, 34 counts. I mean, that's social media rhetoric. The reality is there are a lot of people who cannot afford to pay attention, let alone pay the bill. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And that's the reality. So, if you are a, family who are struggling to survive instead of striving for success, that's an issue. Nobody cares about that. So when you think about that, um, his victory, the stock market, reacted to his victory. Our 401k is healthier now. I saw it; it jumped up. Um, you know that I'm not going to totally give Trump credit, but it is a cause and effect. Um, I have mixed feelings. I certainly did not want him to win, but I'm not angry that he won. Um, I'm disappointed in the lack of the turnout among African Americans. The numbers were actually lower in terms of turnout, and you talk about the demographics,
Yep.
about Hispanic population, Caucasian population, educated white women or white women and white men, and then black men and black women. It's lower this election cycle than it was when Biden ran and won in 2020 against Trump.
So, so let me ask you a question. And this is purely a finance question. Whose responsibility is it to make sure that our finances are aligned with um our goals, right? Make
Mhm.
money, housing, we talk about inflation, cost of food, cost of housing,
Yeah.
living wage, right? Those are probably
Mhm.
the three main things. Whose responsibility is it to manage those things? Is it us,
Mhm.
or is it the federal government that is supposed to keep a social justice agenda around those things?
My position, it takes a community. I think it starts with community. A community is built from the inside out. And when you put the people in place as voters, whether you're in Maywood or Massachusetts or Minnesota, who lost, Trump won that state. But when you think about it, Terry, I think that, ultimately the president or the politicians, they react to what the people who the people want, what they want. They want affordable health care. They want affordable rent. They want an affordable mortgage rate. They want affordable tax. The people is the one that set the agenda. They're the ones at home. It starts at home. You have community that comes together, and then from there, you put the people who you want in office, and then ultimately it leads to the executive branch. The thing that we can't control directly is the Supreme Court. We have the president and then those who surround the president in terms of nominating someone, and then they go through the routine, the process. We don't control that because they aren't voted in by the people, but everyone else says so. It has to start at home, and that goes back to my point. If you wanted Kamala Harris to really win, you would have listened to the people. The people said the economy is the number one issue. Nothing else was number one except for the economy. So I say it starts with the community from the inside out.
So let me give some thoughts about that on my end. One of the reasons why I think Donald Trump, the people that came out and voted, and they voted in favor of Donald Trump, is because there is a false narrative about him that he's a businessman, that that he understands finance and the economy and things like this, and so
Mm-hmm.
therefore, you've seen several large corporations that were going through strikes this year,
Correct.
and the
Most recently,
big
Bowen. Most recently,
yeah,
Bowen.
yeah. And so they recently, they ratified new contracts and things like this. But
Mm-hmm.
here's the problem: most of them were asking for more money, in terms of living wages and things like this.
Yeah.
But here's the problem: when asked, nobody wants to get paid the same way the CEO gets paid.
Mm-hmm.
right? So when you
Right.
see the CEO gets paid 100 million, $150 million and things like this, he's not taking money directly out of operations and sales like a salary does, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
when they afford to pay somebody, you know, 40, 50% increase in their wages, what happens? Well, if sales go down, well, guess what? They either have to lay people off or
Right.
they need to make less money and things like this.
Right.
And it becomes this real tough situation because, again, um, the company has to not only think about this year, but hopefully they think about 50 years or 100 years.
Oh, for sure.
Uh,
For
yeah.
sure.
And so most publicly traded um, CEOs, they make the majority of their money based off the way that the stock trades.
Performance.
And
The performance.
yeah,
That's
and
why they have stock options. It's a base
absolutely.
salary plus stock options for sure. Yeah.
And so every worker would benefit more if they own the stock and align themselves with the executive team.
Mm-hmm.
And quite honestly, they just don't ask for it. And
Yeah.
so when we look at great companies like Woolworth and Kmart that were around 50 years ago and no longer around,
Mm-hmm.
well, what happened? It
Mm-hmm.
started off with them not being as competitive. It
Right.
started off with them not making as much money. Then they had to start laying people off and things like this. And so, um, these are really important things that we have to think about as community.
Mm-hmm.
And when we assess one person to the next and what their agendas are, well, that matters.
It
And
does.
yeah, I'll come back and say elections matter just because of that. And
Yeah.
so I'll
Yeah.
transition a little bit from the stock market into just the election period. You talked about lower participation,
Yeah.
and this is what my opinion is, but you guys should go to Diversity Today Media and look at the article talking about the election results.
Right.
And one thing that is absolute is what the Republican Party did better than the Democratic Party is organizing,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
We did not see the level of organizing and grassroots organizing that we normally see during election cycles, right? Them sending people out to engage and make sure people are signed up to vote. There
Yeah.
was no organized campaigns. If you guys remember, very famously, "Souls to the Polls,"
Right.
right?
That's right.
Um, there was no organized, and this is not local. This is from the National
Mm-hmm.
Democratic Party across the board.
Across the
Does
board.
not matter that Kamala had 120 days
Right.
because Biden had a bunch of days before that the national party was still not doing the grassroots organizing that is necessary for winning elections.
Yeah. I just want to put a pin right there for a second, Terry, because you are in Iowa. I mean, that's where everything kicks off.
Yep.
And it's telling for you to say they didn't do things at the grassroots level. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but their focus was very narrow. They didn't think about it in mass. It was not the right message. For you to say that in Iowa, that just kind of set the tone for every other place. You think about Biden. Biden won Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Biden, of course, won Illinois. He won Minnesota. He won Pennsylvania. You know,
Yep.
he won Arizona. But Trump won those states.
Yep.
He won those states. He won Ohio.
Trump, by the way, Trump won Iowa, a
Yeah,
blue collar
yeah.
state and
Mm-hmm.
economy,
Mm-hmm.
and he won Iowa. How does that
Yep.
happen?
How
Right?
does that happen? How did he win? I understand Wisconsin, but he had a chance to win. We had a chance. Kamala had a chance to win. She was actually ahead to the end. You think about that kind of stuff. Kamala barely won Virginia.
Yeah.
And people who think Virginia is just a southern state, where it's just rural. No. For anybody who's been to DC, they know that Northern Virginia Fairfax County is the largest county in the state. Then you got Prince William County. That whole northern part, north of Richmond, Virginia,
Yeah.
it's very, people come from everywhere, all over the world to live there. And they the one that carry the state. Kamala barely won Virginia, which is really a poor sign of the lack of support, the lack of focus in this mission.
I think that you said it exactly right. I think they took for granted that Trump was a convicted felon. They took for granted that Kamala was a black woman and all these other things, and that black women would come out and vote en masse for Kamala and be the ones that carried her over, right?
Right.
There was a false narrative about black men that they wasn't supporting her, and because of her record as a prosecutor in California, right? And the truth is, when the exit polls came out, what did it show? 81% of black men voted for Kamala, right? So these false narratives that were out there were things that I think hurt overall. I think that Kamala had some credibility problems.
Yeah,
right?
for sure. She did.
And quite honestly, let's just take it one step further and say the world is changing, and independent registered voters came out and they voted overwhelmingly for Trump, right? So when you talk about the decrease in Democrats and blacks that were voting, well, guess what? We have an increase in independents. That means that the independents left the Democratic Party and became independents, right? Or I don't know what the answer is, but 34% of independents voted, and that was the highest number, tied with Republicans. That was at 34%. And then, bringing up the rear was 32% of Democrats, right? So when we look at the election and what happened, it's the organizing issue. It's an organizing issue because, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, what isn't mentioned in social media, because sometimes I make comments and sometimes I get pushback. But the other part of the reality is I work with Muslim students and Muslim parents in Northern Virginia. Okay. And I talk to them all the time. Most of them did not want Kamala. They wanted Trump. They believed in the false narrative. And in their culture, they don't support women. They just don't. They do not. Asian, where I'm an adjunct professor at a college in Northern Virginia. Asians, they didn't support Kamala. They did not. I spoke to them because I'm the kind of person who asks questions, and it's a small sample size, but the data speaks for itself, and they just did not believe in Kamala. They just didn't. Now, you look at the numbers that was like the Pew Institute and other outlets, Newsweek and such. 86% of the black vote went to Kamala overall, while 92% went to Biden. 92% of black women voted for Harris compared to 95% for Biden in 2020. Black males voted good, 78% for Harris, but they voted 87% for Biden. And this is not about divisiveness. This is not about them disliking Kamala. But the trend was there was less minority, more Hispanics voted for Trump than for Kamala by far. And so the numbers are telling. It was that they was tired of the Democratic agenda. They did not believe that this message was pure because there was the economic issue. And then one other thing I want to say, Terry, President Obama said it best. Since the pandemic, all those developed countries, they lost when they ran for re-election. All of them, because the economy was the major issue.
So I get it, but please remember this: what I'm saying. fortunate enough to kind of be in the organizing space, right?
Yep.
And the reason that we know it's an organizing issue more than anything else is because when you look down ballot, right? Forget about the president's
Right.
race,
The other
but you
races.
look at the state, you look
Yep.
at county run
Yep.
and local. Republicans won that too,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
right?
For sure. For sure.
And so you know that what they did was did a good job of getting other Republicans to show up and vote straight party
Yeah.
Republican
Yeah.
or whatever it may be.
Independent.
But well, that's what I'm saying though, right? That
Yeah.
I'm saying that it's an organizing issue,
Yeah.
right? And us as black people, right? We do this and it's a mistake. We think that posting on social media um, replaces showing up in person. So you think
Right.
about
Right.
somebody having a concert, or very specifically the church. People, I got a lot of pastor friends, and they
Yep.
are not happy because they run a service online,
Right.
but people are not coming to service in the same way they were.
Yep. Yep.
And when they don't show up, they ain't showing up with no offering. So
Right.
the offerings are less, right? And
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, it just is. It's not the same,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Posting on social media. So randomly, you see people putting up, I voted,"
Right.
and it may
Right.
look like, oh, a bunch of people went out and voted, and then you see that she got beat badly, and say, "What
Yeah.
happened?"
She
Because
she
guess what?
she took a
Everybody's not
shellacking.
out voting,
She took a
right?
shellacking. Yeah. Yeah. For
And
sure.
the civil rights movement was important in terms of organizing because why? Many people visible, present, out, you
Yep.
know, in
Yep.
numbers.
Yep.
And, they were able to get some things done because you must be visible and you must be present in order to make impact.
Well, and I know that we're talking about the evolution of technology, the evolution of the media, because there wasn't like social media, in the 60s and social media marketing. But it just amazes me how even during the time of the civil rights movement, even when they marched in Selma, when they marched across the bridge in Alabama, Selma, Alabama, they were able to get people from all religions, all
Hmm.
ethnicities. And even when they got beat down, by Bull Connor, they
Yeah.
still went the next time,
Yeah.
and they fought for what they believed in. They voted. They even back when you had to pay a poll tax,
Hmm.
they wanted to vote, even if it meant they died, which many did. They gave their life. They had to be tested in order to be able to vote. Then they paid the poll tax, and then finally, when that was taken away, they went to vote in mass. We don't have that today. We have
Well, that's
lost.
what,
We have lost our
yeah.
sense of what it means to work at a grassroots level, canvassing the community, knocking on doors, going to meetings, holding people accountable. We don't do that, not
So,
nearly as much as in the past, because we rely
so
on social media. With
let me
media
give you some.
lazy, media
Yeah,
lazy.
so well, yeah. So let me give you some insight, right? So when Obama was running, and he was kind of the first one to benefit from social media and stuff like this,
Mm-hmm.
he came to Iowa and he set up he set up offices and hired people in all 99 counties,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you had this very visible group of organizers that were in every county and they were reaching out to people and stuff like this.
Yeah.
And what did that mean? Well, that means that he was able to overcome Hillary Clinton that had a bigger name and people knew her.
Yeah.
But there's nothing more personal than somebody coming to your house or something like this, right?
Right. Correct.
Fast forward that to what 2020. Brandon Johnson, mayor of Chicago, we're fortunate to host him at our house.
Nice.
And this was before he ran in Chicago and won.
Mm-hmm.
But he was here on behalf of Senator Warren, who
Mm-hmm.
did not win the nomination,
Right.
but, you know, being visible and present and sending your people out to advocate on your behalf. It was why I built a relationship with Marsha Fudge, who was the head of House of HUD,
Yeah.
because why they sent her here to come and advocate on behalf of Senator Clinton,
Yeah.
and so even when Biden was running, right, we
Mhm.
had several interactions with President Biden that were positive and things like this, right?
Right.
This go around, I haven't seen anyone,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
Not anyone from the Democratic National Party, not Biden himself, not Kamala. And so, how do you expect to win when people don't even have any opportunity to talk to you on a one-on-one basis or
Right.
anything like this? And
Right.
so, again, as much as all those other things are important, the truth is again, if we don't go back to grassroots organizing and making sure the $1 billion that we spend, you know,
Yeah.
um, is spent in local communities and
Yeah.
grassroots organizing.
Right.
It ain't enough for them to run a commercial. It ain't enough for them to um, send post things on social media. They have to show
Yeah.
up.
I think that from a microeconomic level, you think about the village of Maywood. We've had, some very distinguished guests. Trustee Isaiah Brandon has been on.
Yeah,
We've had Trustee Miguel Jones on for several different occasions. We've had Dr. Mary Larry come on, who aspires to become the mayor of Maywood in the near future. We've had Mayor, Andre Harvey. We've had the mayor of Broadview, Thompson. We've had some very distinguished people, and so in Proviso Township, that they're making an effort. But at the end of the day, in the world of business, it's the bottom line. How much of an impact is what you're doing
hmm
making? What is the transformation taking place? Is this transformational or is it just transactional? We need transformational changes where it's going to lift up a community. And if you're not doing it at the local level, Terry, it's not going to happen on the national level. And
yeah.
that's what I see, especially when you talk about economics. Maywood is millions of dollars insolvent. And again, I see the posts on how, the mayor Booker is doing a great job and, how, some of the trustees' job and, go back and forth, back and forth. But we're here to share the news in this space. Um, you're supposed to do a good job.
Absolutely, right?
You're supposed to do a good job. You're not elected to do a bad job, you know. So from me coming from Maywood, being part of Maywood since the early 1970s, and growing up in Maywood, very active, the Ratliff family engaged, I seen what has happened since Mayor Joe Freelon took office in 1983 compared to now in 2024. And over that time, the ups and downs of Maywood. So you're supposed to do a good job when you get paid. Does it justify you getting a 400% increase, for the next position for mayor after the April election next year? I don't think so. I don't think so. Nobody deserves a
So,
400% raise. Just like the Bowen employees, they get a 37% raise. No pension,
mhm,
but they actually work. They actually work. They're
yeah.
full time. They're part of union. So picking back from Maywood, again, we got to look at it from a microcosm and then expand. But we're doing it but backwards.
Well, I'll tell you this. Mayor Brandon and I, were kind of having this conversation, and I still don't agree with him on some level, but I understand where he's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm saying stuff has to happen from top down. He goes, it needs to happen from the bottom up, and
Mm-hmm.
he's right. The organizing part has to come from the bottom up,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, what you're talking about, your vision, like with Maywood and their lack of having a strategic plan is a problem,
It's a major
right?
problem.
Because like we talked about, the voter turnout is changing, is decreasing from Democrats to independents, and
Yeah.
independents forth the vision about what they need and what they want
Right.
from the federal government
Hmm.
is important. The world is changing.
Yeah, it is.
AI is going to significantly
Woo! Yes.
impact
Yes.
every sector of the private and public businesses.
It's already doing it.
And
It's already doing
yeah,
it.
and so why does Maywood need a strategic plan? Because number one, they have to account for how they're going to spend the money
Right.
that's coming from the federal government.
Correct.
I mean, sorry, from the casino.
Right. Casino. Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah, in a high debt environment, so they have to manage the debt and bring the debt down. But
Right.
number two, AI is going to affect multiple things in the village, right?
For sure. For
One of
sure.
the main things, I don't even know if I should be saying this, but um, if you got businesses there now, right,
Hmm.
manufacturing,
Right.
but will they stay when their needs are going to change based off of AI?
It's a great question.
Within
Yeah.
5 years, they probably are not going to be there
Hmm.
because Maywood is not servicing them properly.
Right. They don't have the technology. They don't have the infrastructure
Yeah.
to withstand that. Yeah, for sure. And I understand, Terry, that they've been working on that and things like that. They're making an effort. But again, the bottom line is it has to happen. And it's not happening. And there needs to be a strategic plan because you could lay it out in detail over a short term and long term plan. There has to be business tools when you
Yeah.
look at this. When you are you going to use a Gantt chart? Are you going to use a SWOT analysis? Are you going to use a pestle analysis? Are you going to use a SMART goals? Are you going to use Boston Matrix, Boston Consulting Group? Are you going to use a fishbone analysis? I mean, force field analysis. I mean, what are you going to do to put this in play? But to throw darts against the wall and hope it stick, it's not working. It hasn't worked since their last strategic plan in the early 2000s.
Yeah, I mean the thing about it is, even if that's the case, these things are new, right?
Well,
Um,
the issue with the Fred Hampton pool is not new. That's continuous. Again, that's an
well,
asset, a lost revenue.
what I mean the thing that are new, AI is new, and hold on for a second. So AI is new, and the revenue stream coming from the casino is new.
Right.
So it requires that means that the old strategic plan is outdated based off those two metrics,
It was
right?
outdated. It was created 2003. It was outdated in 2008. I mean, we're talking 16 plus years, bro. It's
Yeah.
long over. It's that plan is so obsolete. There's been so much turnover, and that's again, that goes to my original point. That's why Maywood economically has struggled up to this point. Thank God for people like State, Senator Kimberly Lightford, who helped move this thing into place where they got this funds, in perpetuity. But aside from that, you should not just solely rely on that. You should have other streams of income. Property taxes is not happening because there's so many boarded homes and so many, homes that's on empty lands and lack of businesses still in place. I mean, it's like a drip drip. You
Yeah.
get the Starbucks, you get the Kroger distribution center, and it's drip. But we need a flow. It needs to be like
Well,
water
again,
flowing.
though, right?
But if
You
you don't
got the
have
Kroger.
if you don't have that infrastructure in place,
There
it's
you
going to
go.
happen. Yeah, it's going to continue to
That
drip drip.
I'm literally saying that the Kroger distribution center is at risk right now based off
Mm-hmm.
the current infrastructure in Maywood,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so again, this is it. I mean, is Maywood prepared for the electric vehicle revolution that you need charging stations, and on some level support businesses with the
Mm-hmm.
charging stations and things like this. There's all these little things that people don't realize, and at the end of the day, here's the truth. Here's the unfortunate truth about a Trump presidency.
Mm-hmm.
He may peel back some of the legislation for that. There was some infrastructure money that was a 5 year distribution
Yeah.
where he went through 2 years of it, which means there's 3 years left. But
Right.
that don't mean that Trump is gonna, he could go in there and cut that funding, and therefore, is not available to anyone anymore.
Yeah, not just that, Terry, but then you hear rumors about since H.W. Bush privatizing Social Security. I don't know if that's realistic or not, but in addition to that, you talk about closing the Department of Education, changing public schools.
Yeah,
Um, you know, the list goes on and on with they talk about this. Oh, cutting the child tax credit. Eliminating
yeah.
the child tax credit, keeping that policy where you have the tax cuts, for corporate tax cuts, doing the Ronald Reagan trickle down economics. I mean, all these things might be in play. We don't know it until they deliver it, until they vote on
I
it.
mean, the thing about the difference between cutting the tax credit and Kamala, who was wanting to boost it to $6,000,
Yeah,
right? That is
yeah,
significant for Maywood and the state of Illinois, and luckily for the state of Illinois, they voted in favor of Kamala,
yeah.
but in Iowa, it's just as significant of an issue,
Hmm.
and our state voted for Trump. And
Right,
so,
right.
talk about people voting against their best interests. I don't know what to say about that.
Uh,
But
I get you.
yeah,
Mhm.
I'll say this: regardless of who's in office, right? At the end of the day, what we have to make sure we understand is how to benefit and what they are talking about. And so
Yeah,
the realities of some of this is, again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. Whose responsibility is it? Because we think that investing in the stock market is for rich people. And
no,
if we think that,
yeah,
right, then we don't benefit from the stock market, who at the end of the day, one of the things that we talk about in our class, right,
hmm, hmm,
is this investment in the stock market better or investing in real estate better,
right,
right? Now, of course,
right.
I'm not going to answer that. You got to come to class to figure it out.
That's right.
But the realities of it is that we have to have these conversations in the Black community in some very in-depth ways, and more than importantly, not just talking about it, not being on social media,
Right,
giving advice about stuff that maybe we don't know, because we talk about insurance as an investment, right?
right. The
Another
mistake.
thing that we talk about in our class, that we break these things down so people can understand when somebody's saying it, why they're saying it, and why it's probably not the most accurate thing to say or a
Right,
way to think about it, right?
right.
And so, but all of this stuff comes back to the same narrative,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Grassroots organizing will make a difference. We have made a difference in people,
yeah.
coming in and investing, becoming
Hmm.
first time investors,
Right.
investing in their 401k plans for the first time, and
Yeah,
having a chance. Because you talked
yeah,
about Social Security,
yeah.
and whether they privatize it or it goes bankrupt, the
Right.
only thing that you can rely on is your own personal investment.
Yes, that's correct. And which is why we push it, which is why we need to have this in the church. We need to have this in the Black churches, and we need to have it in the community centers. We need to have it in the YMCA and the Boys and Girls Club. It needs to be a Rock of Ages and First Baptist and Second Baptist. It needs to be in the Hispanic churches, and they do, to their credit, have some. We as African Americans do not. It's not
Hmm.
a priority in our church, and we expect to focus on Malachi 3:10. Talking about giving their tithes and offerings, and we need to be more sophisticated than that. You
Yeah.
know,
What does the
we need
Bible
to
say?
focus on that.
What does the Bible say? Then he says our people suffer because of what? Lack of knowledge,
Lack of
right?
knowledge.
And
Yeah.
and so and the one thing, the biggest thing that we figured out in our space is fear has driven so many people to not do what is in their best interest,
Absolutely.
right? They would not invest, they would not do these things, and
It's crazy,
you know,
Curry, because even getting to the church, looking at it from building the community from the inside out, the pastors used to say we could spend a lot of money on food, going out, um, vacation, going to Saudi, or Dubai, or Germany, or Disney World. We can spend the money on fancy cars. but we don't invest. Now you think about how much money we as a people waste, trillions of dollars in the beauty industry to take care of ourselves from the outside, getting the hair, the nails, the mani pedi, whatever, but we don't invest, and that speaks to where we are as far as mindset, because spending is behavioral and psychological, and we take our bonus check, we don't invest a portion of it, or we'll put it in a bank account, in a savings account. Child, I got $10,000 in my savings account.
Oh my God! Right,
getting 0.00004% interest. I'm like, you got, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
you invest a portion of that will work better for you.
So we talked a lot about the world is changing, and here's an interesting statistic I want to share, right? Because one thing to talk about it from a personal standpoint or from a church standpoint or whatever, but many of us found out that the Catholic Church was one of the richest institutions in the world, and
Absolutely.
they owned a lot of commercial real estate in prime locations
Yeah.
in the biggest cities
Right.
in the country. However,
Absolutely.
the Catholic Church is not the wealthiest church.
Mm-mm.
You know, do you know which church is?
Well, I'm going to say United Methodist is very wealthy as well, but that may not be the right answer. So what is the right answer?
I don't know. No, I'm joking. I partially don't know. It's either the Lutherans or it's the Mormon, right? And
Okay.
the Mormon church started investing in the stock market maybe 20 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And created an investment fund and things like this. And now they are the wealthiest church. There's a 60-minute thing about it. You should take a look at it. It'd be really interesting. And
Mm-hmm.
it talks about the importance of, we grew from an economy that was relying on on land and things like this to something different. And again, lack of knowledge,
Yeah.
fear. If
Yeah.
our parents would have invested in the companies that they worked in,
Yeah.
right, through the civil rights to the present,
Yeah.
we're talking
Right.
about the car manufacturers and stuff like this,
No doubt.
multiple of millions of dollars each black family would have,
No, like
right?
IBM. I mean, you talk about those companies that are existing
Absolutely.
today. Yeah. Yeah. No question.
Yeah, but I'm very specifically talking about, someone coming out of Detroit and they worked for a car company,
Right.
GM, Ford,
GM.
whatever.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Chrysler.
those,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, those stocks that did tremendously well from the
Mm-hmm.
60s to the 80s,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah.
They
Oh yeah.
created tons of wealth, and
Oh yeah.
those are the things that we need to start having conversations about. And the more knowledge we have, the more comfortable we get with the conversation and things like this, the better off we
Yeah.
are. The question is will the next generation, will our generation benefit from this, or will we not, because we miss the greatest wealth creation period in the history of the world? We are
If you
living within the greatest wealth transfer in the history of the world. And
absolutely.
now what are we going to do with it?
I think one thing I can speak on as far as best practices is, Muslims, they really take care of their own. And, the United States, along with Britain, helped Saudi in the west part of Saudi Arabia find oil. People think that all of Saudi Arabia is oil. It's not. It's only one part of it, but it's a huge part.
Yeah.
We help find that. What they do is, say, for example, their children, they want to go to college. The Saudi government and family support them to go to college. They pay for their tuition, and they give them a stipend. A monthly stipend up to like $1,800. And of course, their rule is king rule. It's different than here in the United States, but they look out for each other, and they have money that they do invest. They invest. They're very spiritual. They're faithful, and it just impresses me because they are consistent with investing. They're consistent with taking care of family, and we as African Americans, for some reason, we go to church, we give our tithes and or offering, We have our chicken dinner after the church, our soul food restaurants in the community, but yet we don't come together to start an investment club. We don't come together to invest. And we are really far behind when it comes to investing. And we have to do better.
Well, I get it, right? And again, for the most part, we have talked about or have been taught that investing is for rich people. And you bring your money to the church. And then we, at the end of the day, white people and black people, we have built tremendous church assets, big buildings and things like this. Right. And, when it's all said and done, that's not enough.
No, it's just starting. Right. It's just the beginning. Just the beginning. Yeah, absolutely. We have to focus. So the Democrats have to change it. They have to change the strategy, because obviously the strategy that they embraced didn't work. There's no reason that Trump should have won. None whatsoever. None. So I always say, we as, the Democratic Party, they majored in the minors. They majored in the minors. The major was economics. Don't you know how much power you have when you control the economy? You control the economy. You control policy. You control the stock market. You create your way of living, the standard of living. But if you don't control that, you can't make decisions about abortion right, about Supreme Court, about change of policy. You can't do that. You will not survive. It's about the economy. As Ross Perot once said, it's about the economy, stupid. It is all about the economy. And until we get that, until Maywood has a strategic plan, they're going to do something that my grandfather used to always say. You're spinning your wheels. You're spinning your wheels. Like you keep doing the same thing. You're going to always have problems with the Maywood Park District. You're going to always have challenges as a village. You're always going to have a lot of homes on an empty lot. You're always going to have problems with the school. You're going to have these problems that's going to come together. They commingle instead of working with them independently to solve problems. So the more we know, the more we grow. That's all I'm saying. We have to do better.
No, I mean, at the end of the day, and this is the last thing I'll say about this. Either we're going to understand that the world is changing and we'll make these adjustments properly. And if we don't, Maywood will have an Hispanic mayor within 10 years, right? And, maybe, but the Hispanic mayor may inherit the lack of infrastructure investment, and Maywood will still suffer from the same problems. High rates of taxes, right? Yeah. Property taxes, no business growth, and minimal and high debt, right?
High debt.
And so what does that mean? In our personal finance, that means bankruptcy.
Right. Because you're insolvent. You're broke. You're insolvent. Correct.
Yeah.
Here's the reality, Terry. I know we're going to leave on that.
So, I mean,
here's something that's true. Maywood went through a change during white flight. White flight happened in the late 60s and the 60s and early 70s. African Americans took advantage of that and was able to prosper because it was a working class Black community. We had businesses in Maywood, and then there was disinvestment that took place. Welcome, we're a nation of all races, all people. We're a melting pot. But because we didn't handle our business, it opened the door for other ethnicities to move in, which is what it is. So we have Hispanics coming in. It's not a knock. It is what it is. So African Americans are moving out of Maywood. They're priced out of Maywood, and that cycle is going to continue. Who's to say that Caucasians won't move back to Maywood? Maywood is a great location, and it's 10 minutes from downtown. Who's to say that won't come back? So who's not to say the housing stock is great? Housing stock is great. So we don't know what the future.
I mean, that is a very that's a very true statement, because again, we're talking about vision, right? What does the Bible say about lack of vision?
People perish.
Right?
Whereas lack of vision, and people will perish.
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you know, how does the Maywood community see themselves when you have a aging black population that will die and leave property to their kids that may or may not live in Maywood? Will they sell those properties for pennies on the dollar?
Right.
Right. And
Right.
you start to see this turnover of
Yep.
Hispanics or whatever. Will you
Yep.
create housing stock that is reflective of a affluent and upper class black population or Hispanic population or
Mm-hmm.
white population, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, sometimes we think or we talk about black as being poor,
Right.
right?
Right.
When that's not the case. I mean,
Not at
Maywood
all.
has
Not at
how
all.
many people
No.
that came from Maywood and is worth hundreds of millions of dollars today,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah, so those are all real conversations that are around who is Maywood for the 21st century,
Right.
right?
Exactly. What's the identity? I want to ask you this one final question before we go, Terry. Do you believe, getting back to the president race and the election, do you believe that Joe Biden should have stepped down in the first place?
That's a tough question, right? Because, you know, what we found out was whoever was running Biden's camp, they were not doing the work and they were taking for granted all of the things that we talk about. Trump being a
Yep.
felon, that,
Yep.
he
Yep.
says these things about women and he would
Right.
not get the woman's vote and stuff like this. And what
Right.
it came down to is you still have to do the work, right?
No
We're
question.
talking about athletes. You could be the most talented athlete in the world and never win a world title because you don't do the work,
That's
right?
right. Right. Yeah.
And that's the honest to God truth.
Yeah.
So
So
I don't know if it would have mattered because I'm saying 6 months prior when he was running, nobody
mhm,
was showing up to Maywood and holding meetings and talking about why the Democratic platform is the best and
right.
that Biden was going to do something great. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right?
That's right. That's the
Part
bottom
of it,
line.
guess what? He tried to get rid of student loan debt. Was
He
that
sure
going to be
did.
enough to take him over the top?
Right.
No, because if it was, it would have took Kamala over the top,
Well, guess
right?
what? Trump is gonna get rid of that. That ain't gonna happen. You can forget that. There ain't no forgiveness in student loan debt. You can forget
There
that.
you go, right?
It's ghost. It's gone. Not gonna happen, Captain. Just not.
If
So
it didn't happen already, too bad, so
right.
sad.
You got to January 20th to beg government to forgive your student loan debt. Otherwise, boop, it's back on, baby. You're gonna
Yep.
be here from Sally Mae and all them people. So
Yep.
whatever. Last question. I said,
And they set you up. They know exactly who you are.
oh, they do. Oh, yeah. So if you out of deferments and out of forbearance time, that 3 years is gone, you gotta pay. Got to pay. So, um, so I wanted to ask you. So I asked you that question, Terry, because people was all up in arms about Biden holding on too long and Kamala only have 110 days for to prepare for the presidential election, and he did so bad. Biden did so bad in his first debate against Trump that he should have stepped down. He's old. I surmise, and I posted this on social media for those who were not aware, that Ronald Reagan, he was faced with the Alzheimer's when he was going for his second term. And he did so bad against Walter Mondale. And there's a clip that I posted on my Facebook page, and it was the second debate between Reagan and Mondale. And the moderator asked, he said to Reagan that there was concerns about his age and how terrible he did the first time. And then Reagan quipped. He said, I said I wasn't going to talk about my age and, talk about that being a factor and me forgetting some of the things I said. I do that sometimes, but we're not here to talk about that unless unless you want to talk about the youth and inexperience of my opponent, Walter Mondale. And the way he said it was like timely. I mean, it was great. Everybody laughed. It was good. He made light of the fact that he was mentally sick. He made light of that he was sick. He had Alzheimer's. He kept going, and he won re-election. And he didn't even run the country. He didn't even run the country.
I was about to say, there's a lot of people that believe that Nancy Reagan was running the country during that time. And, maybe that's true. Maybe Kamala has been running the country for the last few years, right? But at the end of the day, too bad that they thought that they could do something other than what we know works, which is being visible and being present, knocking on doors and putting an organizing team together. Shame on them because they raised over $1 billion. They had the money to do so.
Absolutely. So in closing, audience, the lesson here, this should be a lesson. This is a teachable moment. Get off the keyboard, post in comments on social media, and bullying those cyberbullying who are trying to spit knowledge, because there are people out there who know what they're talking about, and they're not doing it just based on emotions. Get yourself out there and be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Learn from this, because whether Democrats win the House or not, that's only part of the challenge. The challenge is building the community from the inside out, starting in Maywood. Maywood needs to come together and don't spread so much hate or divisiveness. And when the polls open in April, vote for the right person, not those shade. We don't get far showing hatred. That's why we're in the position that we're in now as a people. Do better. Learn from this, and let's do better for the future. Because 4 years, it's going to go just like that. It's going to go real fast. So, and those of you who have hatred towards Donald Trump, hey, the man won. He had a better strategy. He won. And my pastor, my former pastor, Dr. Ronald K. Beauchamp, used to always say that you could get to heaven with a hurting heart because you hurt. Somebody hurt you. You get to heaven with a hurting heart, but you can't get to heaven with a hating heart. Don't hate. Show no malice. Lick your wounds. Get back to the drawing board. Create a strategic plan, Maywood, and build from there. And once we do that, then our odds will be better. We'll identify a candidate who will represent our people and our nation, our community, and our world in a better light. Period.
I agree.
For once we agree, because Terry hardly agrees with anything anybody says. But on that note, we end it on that positive note. It's always good talking to my brother because Terry's a wealth of knowledge, and I love him like a little brother. He's doing great things in the community, and politically, he's very active in Iowa and promoting, fight against diabetes. And, the man he's behind the scenes, but he's making a lot of noise in a positive and tangible way. And so as we sign off, I ask you to like us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and tune in for our next podcast where we bring in our next guest. And in this space, we always promote positivity, objectivity, and critical thinking. I am Dr. Reggie Ratliff. I look forward to seeing you again. God bless you. Be safe. Let's do better. And good night.